On the night of August 3rd of the year 2019, the telephone rang in the apartment of the Semenovs. The head of the family, Igor Semenov, picked up the phone and heard the voice of his son-in-law Alexander Gusev. He only briefly said that their daughter Ruzanna Guseva was not well and immediately interrupted the conversation. This is the Defunct City channel. Subscribe to our channel and don't forget to click on the bell so as not to miss new episodes and stay up to date. Ruzanna's parents, who were about to go to bed, hastily dressed and ran to the car. Within minutes they were at the house where their daughter lived with her husband and two young sons. And with my heart pounding with anxiety, I rushed to the front door. My feet were carrying me there. The door to the front door was open for some reason. They pulled the handle. The door to the apartment was not locked. We went inside. The children were in the room crying, but my daughter was nowhere to be found. The door to the bathroom was locked from the inside. I shouted, "Open up." There was no answer. I cracked the door and see Gusev sitting, leaning against the washing machine, cutting himself with a knife. And my little girl is lying in the bathtub, covered in blood. Igor Semyonov shouted to his wife, who was trying to calm down the children, to call an ambulance, tried to revive his daughter, but she did not give any signs of life. Within minutes, the apartment became crowded. Medics, police officers, operatives, forensic specialists, and investigators. Alexander Gusev, who was bleeding, was rushed to the hospital, but no one could save Ruzanna. Alexander and Ruzanna met in 2008 years. The man was sitting in social networks and suddenly came across the account of a beautiful girl. He wrote. She wrote back. A correspondence started. On their first date, Gusev arrived in the Tula region, where Ruzanna lived. They began to meet. He moved the girl to St. Petersburg. Then they got married. Sons were born. Ruzanna was very bright. She created a video blog, in which she gave lessons in Latin American dancing. In the comments to the videos, subscribers admired the beauty and plasticity of the young woman. She was also quite a talented artist. Ruzanna began to write books and started a blog on Instagram. Her first completed work, Ghost, is a romantic story that takes place during the Mongol Empire of the 13th–14th century. Ruzanna drew the illustrations in the book herself and posted it on her Instagram. The synopsis of the book says, if you like adventure, history, an unexpected plot, love, romance, then you're here. My book will help you immerse yourself in the times of the Mongol Empire, their life, everyday life, and way of life. I have tried to convey all of this in my story. The novice writer set out to continue her book, but did not finish in time. Despite the fact that Ruzanna was not fully happy in marriage, she was a model mother and spent all her time with her sons. Not much is known about Alexander Gusev. He is a native of the settlement of Nikol, Pechenga district, Murmansk region. For about 10 years he headed the St. Petersburg law firm, FES Consulting. The organization is now listed as dissolved. Her husband was worthless. He never paid attention to his children or to her. He played computer games. All the 10 years they were married he was completely unconcerned. And her sister got fed up with it, says Daria Semenova, Ruzanna's sister. Relatives and friends confirm Alexander Gusev was addicted to computer games. According to them, he could play tanchiki and shooters all night long, not allowing his wife and children to sleep with a loud thump on the keyboard and boisterous shouting. And in the morning, he wouldn't sleep a wink and go to work. Things have been stressful for them in the last year. She threatened him with divorce, and he supposedly started to change. He stopped playing games and switched to her, swapped one addiction for another. He began to follow her, making scandals, followed her on social networks, constantly looked at her phone. As soon as Ruzanna just picked it up, Daria recalls. I remember going by car somewhere. Gusev at the wheel. He should have been watching the road, but he was constantly looking at her cell phone. He was jealous of her YouTube subscribers and singers and even the book she was writing. Gusev couldn't accept that she could be interested in anything but him. Anyway, her sister got really tired of his constant jealous rages, and one day she told him that she had decided to file for divorce. That was a couple of days before the murder. The most tragic thing was that she absolutely felt that she was in danger. One day my sister texted me, "He was acting like some kind of maniac. I wouldn't be at all surprised if one day he killed me." According to her, there's obviously something wrong with Alexander's head. He was really very closed, withdrawn. But most importantly, he had very big, just colossal problems with self-confidence. Seeing the change in Ruzanna, Alexander began to follow her social networks. He always knew what she wrote, who she wrote to, what pictures she had on her phone. I do not know how he did it, but somehow he had access to all of our social networks, says Sister Ruzanna. According to her, there was such an episode once. Alexander held a knife to himself and said he would cut himself if Ruzanna cheated on him. She then informed her family that she was planning to divorce her. The tragic moment, according to the sister of the deceased, occurred when Ruzanna was written to by her ex-boyfriend, who had long since gone abroad. He suggested that she visit him in Poland with her children sometime. He lives in Poland now. That is, there was no way to change with him at all. Well, it is believed that this was the trigger for the murder because Alexander got into a rage and started to attack her, says the sister of the killed. Friends of the deceased, they say, were complexed by his own appearance. After the birth of his youngest child, Gusev started going bald and even went to a Turkish clinic for a hair transplant, leaving his wife and children at home without money. Go away and leave Ruzanna without a penny was in his style, recalls a friend of the deceased Tatiana. Because of this she had to borrow money from friends to feed her children. Shortly after returning from Turkey, Gusev killed his wife with a knife in front of his children. According to the indictment, Gusev, out of jealousy towards his wife and resulting anger towards her, stabbed her with sharp objects, including at least 3 knives, at least 16 times in the neck, at least 1 blow to the head, at least 26 blows to the body, and at least 9 blows to the lower and upper extremities. In addition, he crushed her neck with a blunt, hard object at least once, causing Gusev bodily harm. As a result, Gusev's death occurred at the scene as a result of multiple stab wounds to the body. Alexander Gusev categorically denied any involvement in the bloody crime. He claimed that around midnight he went for a run, and when he came back his wife was already dead. He tried to shift the blame onto a stranger who appeared out of nowhere in his wife's apartment. Gusev never confessed during any of the interrogations. As a professional lawyer, he knows very well that the refusal to do so does not lead to throwing the interrogation report in the trash. Having familiarized himself with the materials of the case, Alexander Gusev declared that he wanted a jury trial. The version expressed by the accused during the investigation, that his wife was killed by the mysterious murderer while he himself was running up and down the back stairs, will hardly convince the judge. But it is much easier to silence the average man and make him doubt even the obvious things, as evidenced by the series of acquittals rendered in recent years, which defy all logic. But the jury unanimously found the man guilty and not deserving of leniency. On December 14, 1920, the St. Petersburg City Court sentenced Gusev to 18 years in a maximum security penal colony. It also ordered to exact from the convicted 5 million rubles in compensation for the benefit of the parents of Ruzanna. In the case file there is a video-recorded statement by the eldest son of Ruzanna. He was 5 years old at the time of the murder. Everything happened in front of his eyes. The boy described in detail what and how his father did to his mother. The child still sees a psychologist. What happened made him withdrawn and even aggressive. According to Daria Semyonova, the boy was drawing some kind of black pictures and was constantly withdrawing into himself. Even now, he cannot stay alone in his room. Of course, there are improvements. And at first, with her eldest grandson Maxim, it was quite bad. As soon as he saw a knife, he would throw a tantrum. Now, his reaction to knives is calm, but he is still afraid to be alone in the room. His grandchildren never ask about their father. Only sometimes, all of a sudden, they start talking about Mom's murder. Although my wife and I in their presence never mention it, said Igor Semenov. Gusev spent more than 2 months in Kresty, awaiting his sentence. The courts considered his complaints. First an appeal to the Second Court of Appeal, then an appeal to the Supreme Court, but the sentence was upheld. At the beginning of the year 2021 he was finally sent to Colony No. 6, which is located in Obukov. Now Gusev is 36 years old. According to his lawyer Ilya Ramasvili, in 2031 he will be able to apply for parole after 2/3 of the term. Then he will be 45 years old. His sons, who were rescued from the orphanage by their grandparents, will be old enough. They will surely want to look their father in the eye and ask the simple question why. Take care of yourself and your family.